Greetings, duelists. Welcome to Deck Report Season 4, week number 13. Before I showcase you the deck that I'm going to be talking about today, I kind of want to preface a few things. I kind of want to show you something different from what you're used to seeing this channel, mainly because I am a little bit fatigued on the TCG format. I am still playing the current old decks that you were used to seeing this channel, and I didn't have enough practice when it comes to like other strategies outside of the norm. I want to give a shout out to Vintage Hero. He is a good duel test partner of mine. We had a lot of duels, and they're all involved with the new Canine archetype. Sadly, I cannot show you the replays at the moment because the replay function is kind of busted or glitched right now. But I still want to talk about K9. I want to talk about the deck. And I figured this would be a perfect transition for a deck report. So, for those who don't know, K9 is a new archetype in Justice Hunters. It is an XYZ archetype involving rank 5 monsters, with specifically a rank 9 monster as well. The gimmick behind this deck is to capitalize on punishing your opponent from using their hand traps in order to activate or supplement extra effects. All the K9 monsters except for Lupus can normal summon themselves without tributing if your opponent has at least 2 cards in their hand. Izuna foolishes any K9 card. Jokul can special summon herself alongside another level 5 monster. Lantern can special summon itself from the hand alongside a non-Pyro K9 monster. And if your opponent activated a card in the hand, Izuna can special summon herself. If your opponent activated a card in their hand or graveyard, a monster effect specifically, Lupus can special summon itself from the graveyard. Jokul can add you a non-Aqua K9 monster. Lantern can add you a K9 spell or trap. I already explained Izuna. Lupus gives targeting protection to whatever XYZ has this card as material. Also, during your opponent's turn, you can quick XYZ using monsters, including this monster. So, now that you know about the main deck monsters, let's talk about the XYZs. Ripper can add you a K9 card from your deck to your hand. However, if your opponent has activated a monster effect this turn, it can also set a K9 spell or trap. We'll talk about them in a moment. Hound, during each standby phase, opponent's standby phase specifically, can banish a card on the field. Every time your opponent activates a monster effect, this gains 500 attack. And also, this cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Ex-Werewolf works a little bit different from the other cards because this one triggers upon your opponent activating any card. During your turn, it can banish a card in the field and graveyard. In your opponent's turn, it can banish a card in their hand, looking at their hand. Now that you know the little gimmick behind all of these, let's talk about a few other things. Ripper can negate a monster effect from the hand or graveyard that your opponent activates by detaching one XYZ material. This is very strong because essentially this is a searcher for the archetype that not only is a searcher, but it can also negate hand traps. Like, let's say for example your opponent tries to FF Veiler this or like Fua loss before this, or they try to Ash Blossom this card, or they try to draw a Lockbird in response to this card adding to their hand, this card can negate all of these. Like, all of these cards. The only thing this card cannot negate is stuff like Infinite Impermanence and Dominus Impulse and Dominus Purge, but we'll take monster hand traps at the very least. The fact that this card can also set your spell and traps is also very powerful. I guess before we review this archetype even further, let's talk about their spell and traps. K9 LC Liberation can tag one K9 XYZ monster or any rank 5 monster, and you can summon another K9 monster with a different name on top of it. Experimental Liberation can special summon a K9 in your graveyard and quick XYZ into another K9. K9 X-Force Liberation, specifically during the main phase, can target a K9 XYZ monster you control and tag into another K9, but on resolution can pop a card on the field your opponent controls. This does not target. One thing I forgot to note is that if you use both Jokel or Lantern's effect, you cannot rank into light XYZ monsters with these monsters or the monsters these cards summon as materials specifically. I think this was a very, very smart design decision from Konami's point. The main reason for that is because cards like Paradise Smasher exist in the game, and for those who don't know, this card is pretty much like a skip turner if this card resolves while it has an XYZ material. And yeah, the last thing we need is another archetype that can just abuse another like turn skipping card like that one. So that's one of the reasons that restriction is in there. That restriction, it does have a downside. It means that these monsters cannot make the Hound. However, if you Izuna into Lupus, they can both make the Hound, and they can both make the Paradise Smasher as well as other cards. So now that you know what the deck can do, let's talk about the deck a little bit more in theory. So the first thing I want to talk about is the deck that I chose to build myself. This is a very cookie cutter build that I made. I've already made like 3 or 4 iterations on this deck. With Ripper being generic, I thought other level 5 monsters would fit very well to just summon Ripper. Jokel can special summon any level 5 monster from your hand. Any of them. That is a very, very important note because it means that you can summon stuff like Joker's Knight. If you open Jack's Knight, which is the brick for Joker's Knight, you can also special summon it from your hand. You can special summon Crystron monsters like Sulfador and Sulfenir. You can play a Punk Engine and you can summon Deer Note. If you play Vanquish Soul, you can summon Jiaolong. And a special note with Vanquish Soul specifically, all the K9 monsters are Dark and Earth. At least all the main deck monsters. So right now, the best hybrid at the moment that it's looking like seems to be Vanquish Soul. Another really cool card that I've been testing in this deck is the Sub Blaster, the Negation Fortress. This is just a free special level 5 that you can summon as long as there are no cards in the column. However, if you open this alongside Jokel, Jokel can summon the Negation Fortress on any column. And this happens on resolution of her effect. which means if your opponent wants to stop this from happening, they need to stop it before the summon is successful. Like, this card is really, really powerful when combined with Joko. Because it just can freeze a card on the spot. Imagine you're freezing against Ryzeal and your opponent has a detonator on board. And you resolve the Joko. The Joko can just make the Disa Blaster, like, just negate the detonator on whatever column it's in. One other card that really works on this deck is Chaotic Elements. Joko is an Aqua monster, Lantern is a Pyro monster, and they're both level 5. So you can add Chaotic Elements to this. This also serves as a board breaking card if you have multiples of them in the graveyard. K9 is typically a deck that doesn't matter if you go second because the deck is going to try to capitalize on your opponent's resources. Ideally, you want to go first in this deck because on situations where your opponent empties their hand, you cannot normal summon half of these monsters. Outside of the XYZ lock for light monsters, there are no real locks in this deck with the current monsters that you summon, which means you can summon stuff like SP Little Knight if you want. You can mix this with Synchro, so XY like fusions. Like, you can play as a Mina package. You can play like a plethora of other things. However, I do find 7th Tachyon to be an ideal card for this deck. You can reveal either Umbral Horror or Archfiend Seraph to add either the Jokul and Lantern or add the Negation Fortress. Another card that I found in testing to be finding okay is Shield of the Millennium Dynasty. If you want to further expand on the Millennium engine and on Vanquish Soul, the Regenesis monsters also works in this deck. Not only are there free summons that you can use alongside your K9s, but K9 X Werewolf has 2500 defense, and the unit Hound has 2500 attack and defense. So they both serve well for Regenesis monsters. But yeah, I think you get the idea behind this archetype. Again, I would show you replays later on if that issue gets glitched. Well, the glitched issue gets fixed. But at the current moment, I hope you found this video as informative and to your liking and understanding. I know there's a lot going on with these monsters. Like, one specific cool thing that you can do is like, if you overlay Hound with Lupus, this becomes an untargetable. This becomes basically a Magic Spectre monster that you cannot run over by battle. That can keep gaining attack every time your opponent activates a monster. Ryzeal has no real outs to this. Werewolf is kind of cool because being able to see your opponent's hand and just like take out a key card from the strategy on their turn is also really strong. And the fact that you cannot negate this if it's used with Lupus as material is also very strong. This being able to just negate hand traps after it's summoned is also really cool in the sense that if you decide to play like a combo hybrid that can just summon this card easily, yeah, your opponent is just going to struggle. Something I didn't mention is that this K9 spell and traps can reset themselves back in the battle phase. This can reset all these spells as well during your opponent's end phase. Yeah, I think that's everything so far. Yeah, I really like this deck. I don't think is as good as Dragon Tail and as good as Yummy. I think out of the 3 archetypes from Justice Hunters, this is the weakest one. However, in a format where hand traps are everywhere, this archetype can actually pop off. That's it from me. I'm rambling at this point. I'm not gonna say it anymore. Keep practicing and keep dueling.